we're going to start taking all your life experiences and, shall we say, reshaping them in a way that's going to make this easy for you. Because let's face it, you guys have been around for a while, right? It's not like you suddenly disappeared and you walked through the door and went, oh, where did I come from? And it's important that whatever we do in here matches the experiences you've had over a lifetime. Because then, what we start doing becomes easy. And I want you to realize the conversation hypnosis is both easy and natural when you do it your way. We all have a lifetime of experiences that show us exactly what we're capable of. And the irony thing is that it's sometimes the things we value the least that teach us the most. As you know, I'm not an American. You may have noticed by my accent. I don't live in the States. In fact, I flew all the way here from Asia a few days ago. It's a long flight. And when you have a long flight ahead of you, and you have the security guards, and there's like a queue of about, I don't know, 50,000 people in front of you, and you're sitting there going like, I've got to get through this before flying for 15 hours. It's not the most motivating or inspirational thought, shall we say. So I'm sitting there in the queue, and I'm going like, oh man, and it's moving across, I mean, really, really slowly. They're doing a thorough job of whatever it is they're doing. Maybe they're making a cup of tea in between each one, you know, overcome the stress. It's really, really slow, and my mind's starting to go down sort of a not so pleasant place, like, oh, I'm going to have to do this, and oh, it's going to be boring, and I'm going to be tedious, and I'm going to ask you these questions, and I'm going to take my clothes off, and I'm going to go on, and go through the metal detector, and go back again, and take my shoes off, and go back. Oh, man, it's going to suck. And somewhere in this whole process, I started asking myself, well, what happens? See, I used to love flying. I used to adore flying. When I was a little boy, I'm from the age of 5 upwards, my father used to stick us on a plane where, you know, back in the days we got little plastic wallets with your passport and stuff, and then a stewardess would seat you onto the aeroplane. It's great because you get to go through all security gates without having to go through queues. It's like I'm a VIP, and a very short one. I used to love flying because to me it was excitement, it was adventure. I'm about to go to my grandmother's house or an uncle's house, I'm going to spend the summer there. It was fantastic. I mean, just getting to the airport might have been a challenge because I have to jump out of the car 3 times to go to the bathroom because it's just, I mean, this is the journey, this is it. And of course, you get to the airplane and then you have, you know, the stewardess puts a little plastic bag around you and holds your hand and you're going, oh, this is great. You walk through security and everyone's like, else is unshaven, trying to haggle with the security card to get that pocket knife through, and I'm just breathing going, bye-bye. You see, the whole mindset was different. Inside, I was beginning to anticipate that things are about to come. We all have the capacity to anticipate things that are going to come, don't we? Sometimes it requires us to search for an experience. For me, it's remembering my grandmother's house in Austria, a huge garden. The best time to see this garden was in the mornings, just before dawn. It'd be so quiet. Not a soul would be around. The whole ground would be covered in dew, and the crows would just be waking up. And there was a scent in the air. It's almost impossible to describe, but it was very pleasant. A peaceful scene. No matter what age I was remembering it from. And the funny thing is, I almost didn't know that the garden looked so different in the mornings. Because I'd been to my grandmother's house several years before I discovered it. One day, I was playing in the garden. It was summertime, bright sunny day. I noticed in the right far in the back garden, it's a big garden, there's a bunch of trees growing across just before where the fence is. And I always figured the fence just grows into the trees, but no. There's a little space behind where these trees were, which was hidden away, sheltered. Being a little boy and curious, of course, I had to find out what's behind those trees. Of course, this is the age in which you're being told all kinds of myths and legends, fairy tales. Maybe there's a cave that leads to that other land, a hole inside the tree. I wonder what I'll find on the other side. When I turned the corner and I looked, I found this huge mound of earth. But it wasn't normal dirt. It smelled kind of like the way a forest smells when you walk off the path. It was a rich smell. And it's a huge mound of dirt. And I thought I knew exactly what it is I just discovered. I was excited. I ran up to my grandmother and said, "Do you know you have a baby mountain growing in the back of your garden?" I thought I knew what it was. And she had no idea what I was talking about. So I had to drag her out and show her and said, no. That is a composting heap. I said, what's that? Well, it's the place that keeps this whole garden growing in the way that it does. How does it do that? Do you really want to know? Well, you better come up tomorrow morning and I'll show you. So that night I was very excited to discover what a composting heap would be. What would it do? It sounded kind of magical. Fell asleep and had a dream in which mountains became molehills, in which gardens flourished. And in the morning, I was still in that sort of hazy, warm, sleepy place. And my grandmother came in. And I didn't really fully wake up, even going outside. And that's when I saw the garden for the first time. The crows were crowing. The sky was beginning to change color. There was a fresh smell in the air. My grandmother was going around, collecting weeds and the slugs that had come out for the day. And then she poured them on the compost heap and explained to me what it was. In here goes all the stuff that messes up the garden, clutters it. The stuff that would otherwise prevent your favorite plant from growing. Over there we have a herbal garden with berries and herbs and a few vegetables. Got to keep it clear of the weeds, although it won't grow. Won't bear the fruit we need it to. Most people throw away the weeds, try and destroy them, think they're bad. But they don't understand. The weeds can make the bushes grow if you treat them in the right way. Let me show you. And with that, we walked into the herbal garden. And she showed me how to distinguish from the berry bushes and the weeds, how to pull them out by the roots. In time, she taught me the uses of special tools. Special tools to dig up the weeds without harming any of the other plants, letting them grow. And that's when the real magic happened. The weeds would go on the compost heap. The worms would eat the weeds, turn them into soil, rich, fertile soil. The soil will go back on the bushes, and it grows taller, faster, straighter. People don't often realize how they can use weeds to make their garden grow. I used to enjoy getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning before anyone else was up and just watch the garden. In my mind, I imagined that I could almost sense it grow, feel it changing, developing, something occurring inside the garden that I couldn't quite grasp. And all I needed to know was the air was cool and fresh, and the birds would sing, and in time the sun would rise on a beautiful summer's day. Perhaps the rains would come, feed the garden in a different way. And all the time, my eye would catch a glimpse of a weed here or there, and I'd get excited. Because now I knew what to do with it. Of course, summer times were filled with many things. It wasn't just weeding the garden. I'm not sure that most children would enjoy doing that all the time. So lots of fun activities you do, to go. Sometimes we'd go skiing at Easter, or we'd go watch the music festival. I don't know if you know this, but Salzburg in Austria has the world's greatest or biggest classical music festival. All the big names from around the world kind of come there. And it's particularly interesting because as a kid, I never knew that was there. It wasn't until I grew up I realized that something was there all the time that I didn't even know to appreciate. And so, standing in the queue of the airport lounge and thinking about those things was an important moment for me because it reminded me that sometimes we kind of lose our own focus a little bit, can we not? And we kind of focus our mind on one path or another. And funny enough, you tend to get what you focus on. Have you ever noticed that?